The lady who's been asking these different churches for baby formula reminds me how back in 2016 I got into an argument with an elder in my church, a Presbyterian church that I was raised in, because he didn't like the fact that our church was a Pokestop and people were playing Pokemon Go in the church parking lot. He said that it was disruptive and it made it difficult to drive home, which really confused me because I was like, well, these are all new people that we could all proselytize to. We could preach the gospel or at least try to strike up a conversation with them. And eventually it developed to where he said, well, maybe we should put up a sign that says no trespassing. And then I said, well, trespassing, you mean you don't want sinners at your church? Now, we can't ignore the churches and mosques that did say yes, they did offer charity, resources, and to buy baby formula. That type of behavior should be encouraged, and those places should be cherished. However, at the same time, I'm not that surprised that so many churches did say no, because in my own personal experience, and mind you, I can't speak for every church in America, but in my own personal experience, I have seen the church place an artificial level of scarcity when it comes to charity and love, in that they preach this idea that the outside world is scary and that you can never find good, meaning people except inside your church, meaning that people outside of the church, people who have different belief systems than you, are largely malicious or not very encouraging at all. And when you go to college, when you start meeting people of different belief systems in general, or like me, when I entered into the workforce, I realized that a lot of my preconceived notions about people with different belief systems were simply wrong. Most people were fairly ethical people who were trying to make the world a better place. This is for multiple reasons. I believe it makes people easier to control and less likely to leave the church, but I also believe that it's simply an act of complacency. I believe that it's easy to fall into the mindset that people who disagree with you are all bad people. I myself have had to check myself into not falling into that belief when it comes to certain people in my life. That is something that is very easy to fall into. And in many ways, this is a reflection of how the church in itself can often be, in what you would call the art world, masturbatory, in that it's more so a club or in some cases an old folks home where people just kind of agree with each other instead of actually going out into the world and trying to do the work of God. That club mentality and that fear-mongering ties into why so many churches refuse to give charity, because one, some of them couldn't determine how they could benefit from it, and two, some of them were afraid of that charity being misused, which is honestly unrealistic, because in charity you are going to have people who abuse it, but that is not a reason to not try. In that, I could give out 100 meals tomorrow to people who need them, and maybe 1 to 5 of those could be wasted or abused somehow. That doesn't mean that I shouldn't feed the rest of the people. If you've ever taught a class before, there are some people in your class who are going to pass, some who are going to fail. There are some lessons that you're going to skip. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't teach at all. I mean, heck, this is a shot list from a music video I shot last week. There are 31 shots here. I already walked in on that day as soon as I got there knowing that I was going to have to compromise on at least 3 of those shots. And I was lucky to get some, but I didn't get all of them. But that is part of the process. It's almost never perfect. I'm a big fan of the social experiment. I like how it demonstrates effectively the priorities of the churches in question, but I also think it encapsulates perfectly why so many younger people, specifically Gen Z women, are not as interested in Christianity as previous generations. Gen Z men seem to still be interested in Christianity, but that might be because Christianity can be used to subjugate women. In the case of younger people like myself, one of the reasons why I stopped going to church was because I got tired of the lack of application, in that I am learning about principle and virtue, but my church is not allowing me to actually practice that in an effective manner, in that I am not generating any type of systemic change by going to church. Every time I go to church, it's more so about being self-aggrandizing, learning about how we are all right and everyone else is all wrong. At some point, you start to wonder, why is the church even here if it's not helping people, as opposed to just simply creating an environment where people can just feel better about themselves?